In this video, we want to talk about monopoly. If you remember our discussion about perfect competition, the demand curve was flat. That also equaled our marginal revenue curve and the price. So when we solved for the optimal quantity, we would just look at where the marginal cost intersected the marginal revenue, draw a line down to quantity. That area P times Q would be total revenue. To calculate profit, we would want to look for the average cost curve, the average total cost curve. Note where that intersects the quantity line and put a dot there, draw a line over there. That area above that line, below the line would be total cost, and above the line would be profit. Now, when we think about perfect competition, remember the demand curve is flat and the marginal revenue curve is also flat, and they're equal to each other. When we face a monopoly demand curve, however, that curve is downward sloping, and the marginal revenue curve actually slopes at a steeper rate. To see why this happens, let's look at this table. If demand is flat, in this example at $3, the total revenue is simply the price times Q, which would give you this column. To look at marginal revenue, you note here if you go from as total revenue, as quantity increases by 1, note that the change in the total revenue is simply increasing by 1 as well. So our marginal revenue and our demand end up being the same thing. Now when we look at a monopoly, that demand curve is downward sloping. So in order to increase Q, we've got to lower the price. As we multiply the demand by Q, we see our total revenue column, and then we just subtract the difference as we increase Q. For example, as we go from 1 unit to 2 units, our total revenue increases from $5 to $8, so our marginal revenue is only increasing by 3. And the reason this is the case is in order to get more quantity, we must lower the price. And as we lower the price, we lose those higher sales at the previous sales at the lower quantity. Once again, demand curve is equal to the marginal revenue curve under perfect competition, and they are sloping in monopoly, and they separate as they slope. Marginal revenue curve is always steeper than that demand curve. Let's take a look at this table and see how this would work. Let's begin with, here we have price and quantity. Let's begin with a price of $5 and see what quantity we would have. At $5, we would be able to sell 1 unit. Our total revenue would be $5. Our marginal revenue is also $5. Now, if we were to try to increase quantity, we would have to lower the price. As we lower the price to $4, you note that our total revenue goes up to $8, and our marginal revenue would actually be 3. 8 minus 5 would be 3. To also see how we get to 3, take a close look at the chart and note what we would have to lose, what we would be losing if we dropped that price from $5 to $4. We would be losing this area right here. We would lose $1, but we would actually be gaining $4. So we lost $1 from our $5 sale, actually drops to $4, but we would pick up one more sale. Think about how this would work if we dropped the price to $3 in order to pick up more quantity. As we drop that price to $3, our new total revenue would be 3 times 3 or $9. Our marginal revenue looks like we would go from $8 to $9, so we would be adding one more dollar to marginal revenue. Once again, how we determine this is we look at the loss area. We would be losing $2, and we would be picking up $3. So the net gain would be $1. As we go down through this, we watch as we go to a $2 price, we would increase the quantity sold. Our total revenue actually, though, would go down, and our marginal revenue would be off by $1. We would go from having a total revenue of 9 down to 8. Once again, we see how this would work. That's the loss area. We would lose $3, and we would pick up $2 for a net of $1 loss. Going to $1, we would be able to sell 5 units, so our total revenue would be at 5. Our marginal revenue would actually be a -3 because we would be losing $4 to pick up $1. Do you see how that would work? Now let's take a look at how we analyze marginal revenue here. If we just looked at the marginal revenue column and plotted the values against the quantity, at quantity 1 our marginal revenue would be 5, at 2 it would be 3, 3 would be 1, and at 4 it would be -1. And then if we just drew a line through those points, we would be plotting our marginal revenue curve. Note once again how that curve is steeper than the demand curve. To review, Monopoly have a downward sloping demand curve, a steeper downward sloping marginal revenue curve. We plot our marginal cost curve, find the intersection where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, and from that spot we would draw a line from quantity up to the demand curve. At the point on the demand curve, we would then draw a second line over to the price. That area would be our total revenue, price times Q. To calculate the profit, we'd need to see the average total cost curve. We would pinpoint where the cost curve intersects our vertical quantity line. At this point here, draw another line over, and then the area below would be our cost. The area above that line would be our profit. We also note that the area above profit and below the demand curve would be consumer surplus, and the area to the right of the Q over to the demand curve would be deadweight loss. All right, that's Monopoly.